Han never wanted to be part of the diplomatic mission. He was just a translator, a man who spent most of his days in a small office on Earth, turning alien languages into something humans could understand. But when the Empire sent an invitation for humanity to visit there, the government needed someone who could speak their language. Han was one of only 3 people on Earth who could. The journey took 6 weeks. Han spent most of that time studying, practicing the difficult sounds of the tongue, and trying not to think about how far from home he was. The diplomatic vessel Horizon carried 20 people, including Ambassador, a serious woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She reminded Han of his grandmother, strict but fair. When they finally arrived at Han pressed his face against the window like a child. The planet was beautiful. Purple clouds floated over silver oceans. Cities of white stone rose from the ground like frozen waves. Everything looked clean and perfect, as if someone had polished the whole world. The shuttle brought them down to the capital city. Soldiers in golden armor waited at the landing platform. They were tall, almost 7 feet, with pale blue skin and hair that shimmered like starlight. Their eyes were large and completely black, like deep pools of ink. Han had seen pictures before, but nothing prepared him for how beautiful they were in person. An official led them through the streets. People stopped to watch the humans pass. Han heard whispers in the crowd, words he could barely catch. Strange creatures, small, fragile. He tried not to let it bother him. Humans were new to the galactic community. Of course, aliens would be curious. The royal palace stood at the center of the city. It was enormous, made of white crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the ground. Guards opened the massive doors, and Han stepped into a world of wonder. The throne room was bigger than a football field. Thousands of nobles filled the space, dressed in flowing robes of every color. They parted as the humans walked through, creating a path to the throne at the far end. And there, sitting on a throne carved from a single piece of blue crystal, was Queen. Han forgot how to breathe. She was the most beautiful being he had ever seen. Her skin was pale silver, almost glowing. Her hair fell past her shoulders like a waterfall of white light. A crown of tiny stars floated above her head, and her black eyes seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. She wore a simple white dress that somehow looked more elegant than anything Han had seen on Earth. Ambassador stepped forward and bowed. Han quickly translated her greeting, his voice steady despite his racing heart. The Queen listened. Her eyes moved over the human delegation, studying each person with calm interest. Then her gaze found Han. She stopped. Han felt the weight of her attention like a physical force. Those dark eyes locked onto him, and he could not look away. Something passed between them, something he could not name or understand. The Queen tilted her head slightly, like a bird examining something curious. The silence stretched. Nobles began to whisper. Ambassador glanced at Han with worry in her eyes. Then Queen stood. The entire room went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The Queen walked down the steps from her throne, her bare feet making no sound on the crystal floor. She moved like water, smooth and graceful, and she never took her eyes off Han. She stopped in front of him. She was tall, almost a full head taller than Han, and she looked down at him with an expression he could not read. Han's heart pounded so hard he was sure she could hear it. The Queen raised one hand and touched his face. Her fingers were cool and soft against his skin. Han stood frozen, too shocked to move. Then she turned to face her court. Her voice rang out across the throne room, clear and strong. Han translated the words automatically, before his brain could catch up with their meaning. This human male, he is my mate. I claim him before the court, before the stars, before the ancient laws. Let none challenge my choice. The room exploded into chaos. Nobles shouted. Guards rushed forward. Ambassador grabbed Han's arm, her face pale with shock. Han stood in the center of the storm, his mind refusing to accept what had just happened. The Queen raised her hand, and silence fell again. She looked at the human delegation with calm authority. "Your translator will remain here as my honored guest. The rest of you may continue your diplomatic mission. This matter is separate from our political relationship." "Your Majesty," Ambassador said carefully, "this man is a citizen of Earth. He cannot simply be claimed like property." Han translated, his voice shaking slightly. The Queen smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not entirely kind either. It was the smile of someone who always got what she wanted. "I understand your customs are different, but in the Empire, when a queen makes a declaration of claiming, it cannot be undone. It is sacred law, older than our empire itself. Your translator is now bound to me by ties stronger than any treaty." Han finally found his voice. "Why?" he asked, forgetting to be formal, forgetting to be afraid. "Why me?" The Queen looked at him. Something softened in her expression, something almost tender. "Because the moment you entered this room, I felt it, the connection, the pull. My ancestors called it the soul bond. It happens once in a lifetime if we are lucky. I looked at you, human, and I knew, you are meant to be mine." Han did not know what to say. He did not know what to think. 24 hours ago, he was a simple translator with a simple life. Now he was standing in an alien palace, claimed by a queen he had never met, bound by laws he did not understand. The Queen took his hand. Her grip was gentle but firm. "Come," she said, "we have much to discuss." She led him away from the delegation, away from Ambassador's worried face and the shocked stares of his fellow humans. The massive doors closed behind them, and Han found himself alone with the most powerful being in the Empire. His life would never be the same. The Queen led Han through endless hallways of white crystal. Servants stopped and stared as they passed. Guards bowed low, their armor shining in the soft light. Han walked in a daze, his mind still trying to understand what had happened. They finally reached a set of golden doors. 2 guards opened them, and the Queen guided Han inside. The room was beautiful. A large bed with silver sheets stood against one wall. Windows looked out over the purple sky and the glittering city below. Soft furniture filled the space, and strange flowers in crystal vases filled the air with a sweet smell. "These are your chambers," the Queen said. "You will live here next to my own rooms. Anything you need, you only have to ask." Han pulled his hand away from hers. "I need to go home." The Queen's expression did not change. "That is not possible. You cannot just keep me here. I am not a pet. I am not a prize. I am a person." "I know." The Queen walked to the window and looked out at her kingdom. "Do you think I make this choice lightly? Do you think I want a mate who hates me, who dreams of escape?" "Then why?" Han asked again. "You said something about a soul bond. What does that mean?" The Queen turned to face him. In the soft light of the room, she looked less like a powerful ruler and more like a woman carrying a heavy burden. "My people believe that every soul is half of a whole. Somewhere in the universe there is another soul that completes us. When we find that soul, we know. We feel it like fire in our blood, like stars being born in our chest. Most never find their other half. They live good lives, they marry for politics or friendship, and they are content. But some of us feel the pull." She stepped closer to Han. "When you walked into my throne room, I felt it. For the first time in my 200 years of life, I felt my soul reach out for another. You are my other half, human, whether you believe it or not." Han shook his head. "That is impossible. I am human. You are, our species are completely different." "The soul does not care about species." The Queen sat down on a soft chair and gestured for Han to sit across from her. He stayed standing. "There is something else you should know. Your scientists have not discovered it yet, but humans carry a rare genetic marker. It appears in only one of every million members of your species. This marker makes you compatible with biology in ways other species are not." Compatible how? In every way that matters. Our people could have children together if we chose. Our life forces are aligned. This is not coincidence, Han. This is destiny. Han finally sat down. His legs felt weak. How do you know my name? I learned everything about your delegation before you arrived. I knew the names, the faces, the histories of every human on that ship. She paused. I did not expect to feel anything when I saw you. I thought the meeting would be routine, but when our eyes met, everything changed. They sat in silence for a long moment. Han tried to organize his thoughts. Part of him was angry, part of him was scared. But deep inside, in a place he did not want to examine too closely, he felt something else. When the Queen had touched his face, something had stirred in his chest, something warm and strange. He pushed that feeling away. What happens now? He asked. Now we get to know each other. The claiming is complete, but the marriage ceremony will not happen for 1 month. In that time, you will learn our customs. You will meet our people. And I hope you will come to understand that this is not a prison. It feels like one. The Queen nodded slowly. I understand. If you were, you would feel the bond as strongly as I do, but you are human. Your soul speaks a different language. Perhaps in time you will learn to hear it. A knock came at the door. A servant entered and bowed low. Your Majesty, the ambassador from Earth requests an audience. She is quite upset. The Queen sighed. I expected this. Tell her I will meet with her in 1 hour. She looked at Han. Your people will fight for you. They will demand your return. I want you to know that I will not change my mind, but I will treat them with respect. The relationship between our empires matters to me. What if they threaten war? The Queen smiled sadly. Then they would lose. The Empire has 10,000 warships. Your Earth has 50, but I do not want war. I want peace. And I want you. She stood and walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back. Dinner will be served in 3 hours. I hope you will join me. If not, food will be brought to your room. She paused. I know you did not choose this, Han. Neither did I truly. The soul bond chose us both. But I promise you I will spend every day trying to make you happy. That is not a threat. That is a vow. She left and Han was alone. He walked to the window and looked out at the alien world. Purple clouds drifted across the sky. Strange birds flew in formations that seemed almost like writing. The city below was full of life, full of beings who saw him as their queen's chosen mate. Han thought about his life on Earth, his small apartment, his boring job, his mother who called him every Sunday, his friends who he played games with on weekend nights. All of it seemed so far away now, not just in distance but in feeling, like it belonged to a different person. He pressed his hand against the cool crystal of the window. What was he supposed to do? Fight? Run? There was nowhere to run, except, how could he accept being claimed like property? But the Queen's words echoed in his mind. The soul bond chose us both. He did not believe in destiny. He did not believe in soul bonds or genetic markers or any of it. He was a practical man who lived a practical life. But when she had touched his face, something had happened, something he could not explain. Han closed his eyes and let out a long breath. 1 month until the marriage ceremony. 1 month to figure out what to do. 1 month to understand what he was feeling. He had been in difficult situations before. He had learned alien languages that seemed impossible. He had solved problems that had no solutions. He would find a way through this too. But even as he made that promise to himself, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a dangerous question. What if you do not want to escape? Han opened his eyes and pushed that thought away. He would not give in so easily. He was human. Humans did not surrender. But they did adapt, and perhaps in adapting, they found things they never expected. The purple sun began to set outside his window, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Han watched it sink below the horizon and wondered what tomorrow would bring. 2 weeks passed. Han learned to live in the palace, though he never stopped feeling like a stranger. He attended dinners with the queen, sat beside her during court sessions, and met more nobles than he could count. Most of them looked at him like he was an interesting insect. Some looked at him with open hatred. The queen noticed. She always noticed. "They will accept you in time," she said one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. Strange flowers bloomed around them, glowing softly in the darkness. "Change is difficult for my people. They have rules about bloodlines and proper matches. A human mate was not in their plans." "I can tell." Han had felt the cold stares, heard the whispered insults. He did not need to understand every word to know when someone was talking about him with disgust. Stopped walking and turned to face him. In the 2 weeks since his arrival, Han had learned many things about her. She was kind to her servants. She worked long hours trying to help her people. She laughed at bad jokes and loved sweet foods. She was not the cold ruler he had expected. But she was still holding him against his will. "I have news," she said. "News I hoped would never come. Lord has filed a formal challenge against our union." Han had heard that name before. Lord was one of the most powerful nobles in the empire. His family had served the throne for 1,000 years. He had expected to marry the queen himself one day. "What does that mean?" "It means he is invoking the old laws, the trial of flames." His voice was heavy with worry. "It is an ancient test. When a queen's choice of mate is challenged, the mate must prove his worth. If he fails, the claiming is undone. If he succeeds, no one can ever question the bond again." Han felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "And if I refuse?" "Then I must release you. You would be free to return to Earth. But our peoples would never have peace. The nobles would see it as weakness. They would push for war." "That is not fair. You are putting the weight of 2 civilizations on my shoulders." "I know," looked away. "I am sorry. I never wanted this for you. When I felt the bond, I acted without thinking. I followed my heart instead of my mind. And now you are paying the price." It was the first time she had admitted she might have made a mistake. Han felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. "Tell me about the trial," he said. Explained. The trial of flames was a series of 3 tests. The first was a test of body, a physical challenge. The second was a test of mind, a puzzle that had to be solved. The third was a test of spirit, something different for every person who faced it. "No off has ever survived the trial," admitted. "The last one to try was a warrior from the Empire 200 years ago. He died in the first test." "You are not making me feel better." "I am being honest. You deserve honesty." She took his hand. Her touch had become familiar over the past 2 weeks and Han no longer pulled away. "You do not have to do this. Say the word and I will release you. I will face the consequences alone." Han looked at her. He thought about Earth, about his old life, about freedom. He thought about the bond she spoke of, the pull he sometimes felt when she was near. He thought about the servants who had been kind to him, the guards who had taught him to play their card games, the chef who made special dishes just for him because human food was so different. He thought about who had spent every day trying to make him smile. "I will do it," he said. His eyes widened. "Han, you do not have to." "I know, but you were right about something. I have felt it too, the pull. I tried to ignore it, but it is there. I do not understand it, but I cannot deny it anymore." He squeezed her hand. "And I will not let Lord destroy what we might become." The trial was scheduled for 3 days later. Han used that time to prepare as best he could. He exercised, trying to build his strength. He studied puzzles and riddles, hopping to sharpen his mind. He meditated, trying to find peace within himself. The day of the trial arrived. The entire court gathered in a great arena at the edge of the city. Thousands filled the seats, eager to see the human fail. Lord stood on a platform, dressed in black armor, his face twisted with satisfaction. Han stood in the center of the arena wearing simple clothes. He had no armor, no weapons. He had only himself. Watched from the royal box, her hands gripping the railing. Lord raised his voice so the whole arena could hear. Today, this human faces the trial of flames. If he survives, he will be recognized as the Queen's true mate. If he fails, he will be sent back to his primitive world in shame, and the Queen will choose a proper partner. The crowd cheered. They wanted him to fail. Han could feel their hatred like heat from a fire. But he also felt something else. From the royal box, he felt fear, her hope, her love. The bond between them had grown stronger over the weeks, even when he tried to fight it. He would not let her down. The first test began. A gate opened on one side of the arena and a creature emerged. It was massive, like a bull made of stone and fire. Flames leaked from cracks in its rocky skin. Its eyes burned red with hunger. Han had no weapon. He had no armor. He had no chance of fighting this monster directly. But humans had never won their wars through strength alone. Han looked around the arena. He saw the sand beneath his feet. He saw the walls, made of the same white crystal as the palace. He saw the water fountains at the corners, meant to keep the sand from drying out completely. A plan formed in his mind. The creature charged. Han ran, not away but toward one of the fountains. The crowd laughed at what they thought was cowardice, but Han had survived his whole life by being smarter than his problems. He reached the fountain and grabbed a handful of wet sand. The creature was right behind him. Han spun and threw the sand directly into its burning eyes. The creature screamed as steam exploded from its face. It stumbled, blind and confused. Han ran to the next fountain, gathering more wet sand. Again and again he threw it at the creature, cooling its flames, weakening its fire. The crowd fell silent. They were watching something they had never seen before, not strength, not speed, but cleverness, adaptation, humanity's greatest gift. The creature fell to its knees, its flames extinguished. It looked at Han with something like respect, then bowed its head in surrender. Han stood over it, breathing hard, covered in sand and sweat. The first test was complete. In the royal box smiled, and in the crowd the whispers began to change. The crowd was still buzzing when the second test began. Han wiped the sand from his face and tried to catch his breath. His muscles ached and his heart was still pounding, but he had no time to rest. A platform rose from the center of the arena. On it sat a complex structure of crystal and metal, covered in symbols that Han did not recognize. Lord announced the challenge. The puzzle of ages. This device was created by our greatest minds 1,000 years ago. Inside it is a single blue gem. The challenger must find a way to remove the gem without breaking any part of the structure. He has until the shadow reaches the marking stone. Han looked up. The sun was moving across the sky, casting a long shadow that crept slowly toward a stone at the edge of the arena. He had maybe an hour. He approached the puzzle and studied it carefully. It was beautiful, like everything the made. Crystal pieces interlocked with metal bars, tiny gears connected to delicate chains. Every part seemed to depend on every other part. One wrong move would cause the whole thing to collapse. Han had always been good at languages. He understood that all languages, whether spoken or written, were really just puzzles. They had rules and patterns. Once you understood the rules, you could solve them. He looked at the puzzle not as a machine, but as a language. Each piece was a word. Each connection was grammar. The gem at the center was the meaning he needed to find. He began to work. His fingers moved carefully, testing each piece, learning how it connected to the others. The crowd watched in silence. Even Lord seemed interested, though he hid it behind a mask of contempt. Time passed. The shadow crept closer to the marking stone. Han worked faster, his mind racing through possibilities. Then he heard a sound behind him. He turned. Another challenger had entered the arena. Not a human, but a young male, barely more than a boy. He wore the colors of house. Lord smiled coldly. The old laws allow for competing challengers. My nephew will also attempt the puzzle. Whoever solves it first wins the test. Han understood. If won, the credit would go to House. It was a trick, a way to steal his victory even if he succeeded. Approached a second puzzle that rose from the ground, identical to Han's. The young's hands shook slightly. He looked scared. Han turned back to his puzzle and continued working. He was close. He could feel it. The pieces were starting to make sense. Then he heard cry out. Han looked over. The young had made a mistake. One of the crystal pieces had cracked and a chain reaction was beginning. The whole structure was about to collapse. His face was pale with horror. In culture, failing a trial brought shame not just to the individual but to their entire family. House would be humiliated. Han looked at his own puzzle. He was seconds away from solving it. All he had to do was remove the gem and the second test would be over. He would win. But was just a boy who had been forced into this competition by his uncle's pride, a boy whose life would be ruined by one mistake. Han made a choice. He left his puzzle and ran to side. His hands moved quickly, years of translation work having trained his fingers to be nimble. He grabbed the falling pieces, held them in place, guided his hands to stabilize the structure. Like this, Han said. Hold here, yes, now push that piece back gently. Together they saved the puzzle from collapsing, stared at Han with wide eyes. Why, the young asked, you could have one. Han shrugged, winning is not everything. He returned to his own puzzle. The shadow was almost at the marking stone. He had seconds left. His hands moved faster than they had ever moved before. The pieces clicked into place. The patterns aligned, and with one final movement, Han pulled the blue gem free. The crowd exploded, not with anger but with something Han had not expected. Cheering, applause, they were on their feet shouting his name. Even Lord looked shaken. His nephew was supposed to win, or at least make Han look bad. Instead, Han had saved and still completed the trial. In the royal box, had tears in her eyes. She stood and raised her hand, calling for silence. Han of Earth has completed the second test, but more than that, he has shown us something we rarely see: compassion for an enemy, kindness without reward. This is the human spirit. This is why the soul bond chose him. Approached Han and bowed deeply. You saved my honor. My family owes you a debt. Han helped him stand. You owe me nothing. Just remember this moment. Remember that strength is not always about power. Lord was silent. His face was dark with fury, but he could say nothing. Han had played by the rules and had still shown him to be small. The third test would happen the next day. Han was led back to his chambers, where servants brought him food and medicine for his tired muscles. He sat by the window and watched the night sky fill with unfamiliar stars. There was a knock at his door. Entered, her face glowing with pride. You were magnificent, she said. I almost lost. But you did not. And what you did for that was not part of any strategy. That was who you are. She sat beside him. The third test is tomorrow, the test of spirit. I cannot tell you what it will be. It is different for everyone, but I believe in you, Han. Whatever happens, I believe in you. Han looked at her. In the soft light, she was beautiful beyond words, and somewhere in the past weeks, his feelings had changed. The anger was still there, but it had made room for something else. I believe in us, he said. Smiled. It was a real smile, full of hope and warmth. She leaned forward and kissed his forehead gently. Rest now, she said. Tomorrow you finish this. She left him alone with his thoughts. Han lay down on the soft bed and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring the final test. Tomorrow would decide everything. But for the first time since his arrival, Han was not afraid. He was ready. The morning of the third test arrived with gray clouds covering the purple sky. Han stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by thousands of watching eyes. The mood was different now. After his victories in the first two tests, many had changed their minds about him. He heard cheers mixed with the silence of those who still doubted. Lord stood on his platform, his face like stone. He had lost much in the past 2 days. His creature had been defeated. His nephew had been saved by the very human he wanted to destroy. Now, only one test remained. The test of spirit, Lord announced. His voice was cold. This test cannot be prepared for. It cannot be fought with strength or solved with cleverness. It reveals the truth of who you are. The ground beneath Han began to glow. White light surrounded him, growing brighter until he could see nothing else. He heard gasps from the crowd, then silence. When the light faded, Han was no longer in the arena. He stood in a place of darkness. No ground beneath his feet, no sky above, just endless black in every direction. He was alone. Then he heard a voice. It was his own voice, but colder. So this is the human who thinks he deserves a queen. A figure stepped out of the darkness. It looked exactly like Han, but its eyes were empty and cruel. "What are you?" Han asked. "I am you, the part you hide from everyone, the fear, the doubt, the anger you pretend does not exist." The shadow smiled. "The test of spirit shows you your true self. Most people cannot face what they see. They break, they run, they fail." Han stood his ground. "I am not afraid of myself." "Really?" The shadow began to circle him. "You are afraid of many things. You are afraid you are not good enough. You are afraid you will never truly belong. You are afraid that does not really love you, that she only wants you because of some magical bond." The words cut deep because they were true. Han had felt all of these fears over the past weeks. He had pushed them down, ignored them, but they had never gone away. "You are a small man from a small planet," the shadow continued. "You have no special powers, no great strength, no ancient bloodline. You are nothing." Han closed his eyes. The darkness pressed against him, heavy and cold. It would be easy to give in, easy to believe the shadow's words. But then he thought of her smile when he made her laugh. He thought of her tears when he completed the second test. He thought of all the small moments they had shared, eating dinner together, walking in the gardens, sitting in silence that did not feel empty. He thought of the young he had saved. He thought of the servants who had become his friends. He thought of the guards who taught him their games and the chef who made him special meals. He had built something here, something real, something that mattered. Han opened his eyes. "You are right, I am afraid. I am full of doubt and anger and fear, but that is not all I am." The shadow stopped circling. "I am also kind, I am also brave, I am also capable of love." Han stepped forward. "My fears do not define me. They are part of me, but they are not all of me. I choose what I become. I choose who I want to be." The shadow's form began to flicker. "You cannot defeat me. I will always be with you." "I know." Han reached out and put his hand on the shadow's shoulder. "And that is okay. I accept you. I accept all of myself, the good and the bad. That is what it means to be human. We are broken and beautiful at the same time." The shadow stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly it smiled. Not a cruel smile, but a peaceful one. "You have passed the test," it said. "You have faced your true self and did not run. You are worthy." The darkness exploded into light. Han found himself back in the arena. The crowd was silent, staring at him with wide eyes. He had been gone for only seconds in their time, but he felt like he had lived a lifetime. Lord was pale. He knew what it meant when someone returned from the test of spirit. He had lost. "It is done," Queen announced. Her voice rang across the arena like a bell. "Han of Earth has completed the trial of flames. He has proven his body, his mind, and his spirit. By the ancient laws, he is my true mate. Let no one challenge this again." The crowd erupted. This time the cheers were overwhelming. Even those who had doubted were on their feet, celebrating. Han stood in the center of it all, exhausted but happy. ran down from the royal box. She pushed through the crowd and threw her arms around him. Han held her close, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," he replied. Lord watched from his platform. His face was twisted with hatred, but there was nothing he could do. The trial was over. Han had won. But as Han looked at the defeated Lord, something nagged at his mind. Why had pushed so hard for this trial? Why had he been so desperate to separate Han from? Later that night, in the quiet of the palace, told him the truth. "There are factions within the Empire who wanted war with Earth," she explained. They sat together on a balcony, watching the stars. They saw humanity as weak, easy to conquer. They wanted our resources, our planet, our people. And Lord was part of this faction. Nodded. "When I claimed you as my mate, I was not just following the soul bond. I was also protecting you, protecting all humans. If you became my mate, Earth would become part of the royal family. To attack Earth would be to attack the crown itself." Han felt something click into place. So the claiming was also political. "It was both," took his hand. "I will not lie to you. When I first felt the bond, I was surprised, scared even. But I also saw an opportunity to protect your people. I am a queen. I must think of more than just my heart." Han was quiet for a moment. Part of him was angry that she had not told him sooner, but another part understood. She had been carrying the weight of two civilizations on her shoulders, just as he had during the trial. "And now," he asked. "Now my heart and my duty are aligned." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I love you, Han, not because of politics, not because of the bond. I love you because of who you are. You are kind and clever and brave. You showed my people what humanity truly is. You changed everything." Han looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning through space, unaware of how close it had come to war. His family was going about their lives, not knowing that their son had saved them all. "I love you too," he said. The words felt strange in his mouth, but also right. "I did not plan for any of this. I was just a translator, but I found something here that I never found on Earth. A purpose, a place where I belong." Looked up at him. Her black eyes reflected the starlight. "Then stay," she said. "Not because you have to, not because of laws or bonds or politics. Stay because you want to." Han smiled. For the first time since his arrival, the smile reached all the way to his heart. "I will stay," he said. "I choose this, I choose us." And as they sat together under the alien stars, Han knew that he had found something greater than freedom. He had found home,